Great little story, brother. I get it. Question is, so I'm in the mines in Perth.
Yep.
I pretty much have to work my ass off at the moment to get the money, but the last year I've been kind of like in the proper rat race and blowing my money when I go back to Perth and starting all over again, literally every month. And yeah, it's been quite a toll on me because that toll on me. It's for me basically I can earn good money. I think I'm pretty sure I got pretty shit game. I was lucky when I was younger. I had small town friends and all that, but at the moment, like I think the women thing is really eating me away, and being in a job that I just despise, but it's opening all these doors to pay for coaching and stuff just to keep me sane at the moment. But I'm in this weird
How
loop.
old are you?
29.
How old are you?
29.
You're hitting make or break. We're going to make a decision.
Mm.
What do you want? Do you want pussy or money? It's hard to have both. See, I took a time where I was on parole. So I've been out of prison from fucking probably 2017. I got out. I had 6 years. I had 4 years parole. And then I'd been out and I just had one girl for not even the whole time. I would say that parts, maybe a year or two where I didn't have any pussy because I was on parole. I couldn't go out. I was banned from every fucking venue. Couldn't drink, had a lot of things. So I've seen people online where they jump on and say, oh, that's like a monk mode. I was essentially put into that. And sometimes it gets to a point, I think, where it's very hard to have both when you're just starting out and say, oh, because what you water grows, right? So you say, right, well, I want to get heaps of girls, but it takes a lot of time and it's the mental strain. And it's hard because you think, well, if I don't have the girls, why do I want to go and do all this work and all this shit? It becomes like a fucking, one's got to outpace the other. You got to have a desire for one more than the other. And the money side and getting all that sort of in place is going to be laying the framework. It's like and then the girls are more passive, right? Like it's a passive dividend of success. Whereas if you're chasing pussy, it's very hard because it's like a direct. You're spending a lot of time on Tinder, all this shit. Whereas if you get the success and get your financial things and all that sort of in place, the girls, you get more of a passive return. You don't get unlimited pussy, but you get more options. Passively, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you. If I was honest with myself, it would be girls. I grew up in Aboriginal. I still don't have a real concept for money. Like money's not how do I explain it? It might be just a poor mentality.
Plenty of Aboriginal.
But yeah, I get it. I look at it. I blow it. It's not a fucking big deal. But obviously when I don't have it, then shit hits the fan. I got to go out and work again. But yeah, the not being a man that I can go attract women is eating me away. That's for sure. That's a big thing that's hitting me.
What's your hold up? What's your issue with women? Where do you feel like you fall over? You just can't talk to them. You just can't attract them. You just
you
talk to them and it just goes nowhere.
Yeah, I think it's closing really. Because I went to Goldie for a few years, went out, talked to every girl I could, was sold on the pickup thing, and fucking failed miserably for 4 years. I was just like sexless. But I went out every night, every day, talked to like thousands. That's the hardest part, right?
You get like it snowballs, the rejections and that, and like the non-success spirals. You get more of what doesn't come. Like if you're fucking feeling like you're failing and things like that, it starts to like become a self-fulfilling prophecy that you struggle more. I think that from the sound of it, it's be best to have just more of a strategy, and that girls will come passively if you work on that other side. Like where do you think it falls over? Just you think that maybe you're too nice, like a nice guy, if you can't close? Do you not have that like killer urge to just try and close? That killer instinct? That like, you feel like, oh, I'm going to go in for the kiss even if I fucking get rejected? Because that's a close. It's better to try and close and fail than to be like, oh, I could have tried, but I never know. That's the worst thing.
Yeah, I went through a few stages, but I think there was that killer aspect. I could only get past that if I was blind drunk. I'd have pretty good success. Though I stopped drinking. It's a hard one because you kind of got to go out with me and yeah. I don't even know where the blind spots is. It's hard to go back and see where your blind spots are because I went out with some guys before and
do you have more success if you're with the group? Have more success when you're with other guys and you're out?
Kind of, but because I grew up in that Aboriginal culture, it's like a shame to do it. So I would actually have fun, be the clown, but then when it came to like closing, I would feel ashamed to do it, to bring sexual energy.
It's hard because you're dealing with like it's like a heritage thing. You know, like it's so it's hard to it's like it must be in something that you're doing near the end where you're just like it's just too big to overcome. And it probably comes across to the girl too, where she's like, he mustn't like me because he's not fucking like going for the clothes.
Yeah, and mind really you too, I did a few sessions with Ryan, with the Ryans here, and something I didn't even know. So I grew up with a single mum and on and off, but she was kind of like very toxic woman. So I didn't really know what feminine energy was. And I haven't talked to her for maybe, she asked me for money like a year ago and I just had enough. I was like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And and that's the only time she kind of contacts me. So anyway, so never had a father. And my father figure was my granddad. He passed away when I was about 13, 12. So I was kind of like looking around at my mates' fathers to see what a father's like. But I never got shown in the Aboriginal culture. You don't get shown. You don't get taught anything about. The uncles don't come up and tell you like, oh, this is how you do. That's how you get the girls. Nah, it's just it's not.
You're in the dark. You're like fucking feeling around in the dark, and then you're not having success. And you're like, well, this fucking reinforces that I shouldn't try. You haven't really been shown.
I've learned a lot. It sounds like guys here.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. You're right.
And I've seen that. I've seen that with Aboriginals because I was in prison. So I've seen quite a few Aboriginals in prison in Queensland, and I've gotten on with many of them, and I would consider many of them my friend. But I would say that I have seen a trend where the men, when they're stuck in that like fucking 18 to 30 something years old, it's like for quite a few of them, they are in the dark. You know, like dad might have been in prison, or dad's fucking shit's happened with the father, and it seems like the fathers sort of get somewhat chased away or pushed out, and a lot of the younger guys are trying to figure it out themselves. And then it gets to a point where you're older and you're like, well, how do I even start? Like, what am I going to do? Who fucking teach me? Because this piece is missing. And the older you get, it's harder to be like, well,
it's true.
It's like a ladder. My
older brother's gay,
ladder,
so
and then
I didn't even.
Rungs are gone.
Anyway, excuses aside, like I got a lot of information off these guys here, but I go out and try to test it myself. It's still blind in a way. And anyway, after almost a decade now, I went out I had more success in my small town because I had the network of friends, had a mining job, bloody, you know, the network of friends just did the whole wonders for me.
It does, because they bring women around you that you get like social proof where they say, oh, this guy's okay, he's not a fucking psycho. So the few of the hurdles are already skipped. So it makes it quite a bit easier. Social circle game's the thing.
Yeah, though, in the last, I would say 5-6 years, I've moved around Australia everywhere. I went from Cairns, Brizzy, Goldie, Melbourne, now to Perth. I've travelled everywhere within Australia, that's for sure. And so I don't really have a home base anymore, and my friends' network's kind of like dissipated. So I've got to start from scratch. It's just
the more you travel, the harder it is. The harder it is. The more it's harder to grow in a community. The best thing for a man is to try and stay in one spot and build a reputation in the area. He knows the area, he knows the people, he can get known in the community, build status in the area, knows how shit works. When you're moving all the time, you're on Tinder trying to talk to fucking like 5s and 6s, you got to start again everywhere you go. You know, it's fucking hard because you don't know the area, you don't know who you're talking to. You got to start from the bottom again. Moving is crazy. The only time to move would be if you're getting, it's worth the reward, you know, like you're moving for a job that pays 50K to 100K a year. You know, it's got to be fucking something vast because you're hitting the age now where you sort of want to get like fucking at your age, I was still a fucker, like I was still getting in trouble all the time and shit like that. But you're hitting that age where you want to start to find your stride. But the hard part for guys, I think, is that they need to be around other men. That's a big part that's missing. I only learned that in the army, and I see it a lot of guys now where it's just hard because guys have things missing. If you're not really around men too, they sharpen each other up because especially if you haven't really seen your dad, you don't really know how guys behave. Not you still have your friends and things like that, and you see them, but you don't really see them all the time around. You see how they are around women, what works, what doesn't. They push you to compete. They push you to fucking push forward. I think all guys should live with other guys until they're older, like maybe even fucking forever. I think guys should live with other men because they keep each other on top.
I think you're right with that because I failed that real bad since I was 21. Yeah, I just left all my brotherhoods and stuff and moved to the city on a dream. I'll go fuck all the pussy I can. So anyway, I'm kind of getting lost in track here. So you're saying multiple things, but you're saying I'm getting to that point where I've got to get my shit sorted, and because it'll hurt me in the future.
You got to and what you want. You want to chase pussy directly or try and get it more passively by building up your status in the community, building up your status around work, going to fucking maybe he's playing some more sports or something like that. Just building fucking a brotherhood, getting around more men, and then the pussy sort of passive because they have friends.
The only way I can do that with my current career, because I'm a mechanical fitter in the mines.
Oh yeah.
I'm doing FIFO from Perth, but I have no life in Perth.
Yeah, I have a friend that did FIFO and fucking just killed himself 2 months ago because it's fucking stressful, right? You're isolated.
Big time, man. Big time. I've been doing it for years, and it's hitting me hard.
Yeah.
So the only option I have is to go back to a little small town. It'll be easy for me to build a community like that. Yeah. I know because I've moved around all of Australia. I know exactly where it's going to pop off. Couple of $100 billion worth of construction. It'd be stupid. It'd be stupid not to be there in my industry. But I don't want to be in this industry for so long. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll just have to do it and see what happens in the future because I don't really have any options.
You're running out of options in that you just don't really have a history of success with women as well. So, and it seems like that's just fucking eating at you. You want to get that at least out of your system. You don't want to be 40 and be like, fuck, I never had that run of pussy. It could fucking eat you up, and then you end up really depressed or fucked up.
Yeah. So I got a small hometown to go back to, but I'm not going to go there because there's no pussy.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other, I don't know if you know Port Hedland and all those mining towns. It's a mining town, so there's always going to be more guys than girls. So it's just how it is, man.
Yeah,
literally. Then you go to the cities, it's just flooded with women. It's unreal. So yeah, I think just having a chat to you, I think that's really all I can kind of do at the moment.
I think it's the only thing you can do. You also can push into other things, you get there and you think, I don't want to be there fucking 10, 15 years there, but it opens other doors and opportunities, like they say, you got to work here, but maybe you can get moved into somewhere else that's a bit better or something like that. It's tough, but you just don't really have a lot of fucking options. All your options.
I've explored the mining industry. The main thing I really dislike about it is the people and their mentality, and they're in the matrix, and it's, even though they make good money, but they're still, they only get 1 or 2 houses after their career, or 3. The best I've seen is 5 or 6.
Yeah. It all depends how you invest. It's all fucking investing. They don't really invest very well. You invest in fucking crypto, I don't know, tech stocks, things like that. Just that have, because you're still young enough where you can take considerable risk. They're usually quite risk adverse. They're invested in their super, fucking real estate, fucking shit that doesn't really, real estate in that you can be successful in and it can do quite well, but it's a very long fucking game. Real estate's 20, 30 years down the track, which is always good, but you are still at a younger age where you can take risk, because the worst case, it all blows up in your face. You lose 5 years, 5 years of investing, but you could fucking do extremely well, cryptos, tech stocks, fucking especially those two. There's still emerging markets that.
Perfect. So I was wondering, are there any red flags and disqualifiers on cryptos that you know about that don't get brought up a lot? Or is it more of like a gut feeling, you sniff them out kind of thing?
There are a few, but I think crypto's partly gut feeling for me, partly community as well. So what communities around it, if the guy running the project or the people involved in the project have a history of success, or if they've just fucking appeared out of nowhere. And I think crypto in general, it depends what altcoins you're talking about. If you talk about a couple specifically, maybe I can give you a bit of a better analogy. But what happens is it's like a rising tide lifts all boats to a point. Like if Bitcoin's going up, the shit coins generally, especially in the top, 50 or 100, if you start pushing down like fucking 500 or 1,000 down, many of those will fail. But the shit coin should outperform. It's like seasonal, right? Like Bitcoin has its fucking run, breaks new all-time highs. Bitcoin dominance goes to like 50, 60%. And then fucking Bitcoin's so high and everyone's happy with the market. So they think that it's fucking safe to enter shit coins. Sentiment's very high. And then Bitcoins have their flood. It's just like supply and demand, right? The money is like putting fucking a giant beach ball and you've just got all this money to put into the market. So all the shit coins eventually just have to be provided with liquidity, the top 100, whatever. It's just, to me, I look in the top 20 and I think, the blue chips like Ethereum, that I just look at shit that's going to last another cycle. And I just don't hold any of the other crap that I don't think is not going to last another cycle in times like this, because, we've got a recession going on, whether they sort of deny it or not. And next year still has potential to be quite ugly. And yeah, shit coins, even from here, they still get the most battered. Like Bitcoin dominance is what, 42, 44% now. And shit coins have still, like, they're created, dominance usually doesn't, the bear market doesn't really stop until Bitcoin dominance is 50, 60%. So this would be completely unusual if it just ends here. But it might end here to a point because Ethereum's got the merge. They've got ETH 2.0 coming out, merge in when? I think September, so mid-September. So it is potential that I would think over time Ethereum will take more market share from Bitcoin, because Ethereum now, after the merge, it's meant to change the inflation to -1%. So the inflation goes from 1.4, I think it is now. It was 3.5 or something last cycle. They brought it down to 1.4 or something because they're burning as well. And then after the merge, it's meant to go down to -1, so it should be deflationary. So I think Ethereum has a lot of things going for it. And if Ethereum's successful, I do think that people will speculate, and the shit coins, even like ADA and fucking things like that, will rise as well, because people think that they've become undervalued according to Ethereum. That's sort of how things work. And all the competitors should theoretically rise with it. And they tend to rise more because they have lower market caps. So I think with red flags, it's still quite gut feeling. I have fucking had some horrible sells since I've been in crypto. I sold 20 million Matic at 1 cent. When it went to fucking like $2 or $3, I would be rolling around in many jets now. So I have had some fucking horrible sells. I do still think that it's a lot of gut feeling. It's like you just know sometimes and it just works out, or it doesn't, because you have to have that like belief. Otherwise you would sell a shit coin that's up like 2 or 5x. It's very hard to hold ones to like 100 or a fucking 1,000x, because you think, oh, well, I'm in profit, I'll sell. And sometimes you sell and they just keep running. I think with shit coins, like ones that you like and projects that you like, you just buy and just have a plan that you just won't sell until the next cycle. Like now I'm scaled back into Ethereum. I think I was scaling back in about 1,500 US, or selling at about 3,800 last cycle. And I've started scaling back in before the merge, but I don't think that I'll hold that bag like forever. I think that around the time of the merge, I'll just reassess the market, because I don't know. I think that there still could be more downside over. I don't think the lows I don't believe the lows will fucking fail from here, like the 17K low on Bitcoin, the 800 lows on Ethereum. I don't know if they'll fail, because these funds and that blew up. Luna blew up, 3 Arrows blew up. Fucking what else? Luna had to sell a ton of Bitcoin. Tesla sold. When Tesla sold at 30K and they announced it and the price didn't really fall, that tells me that there's a lot of sellers are sort of fucking pretty exhausted. Because if Tesla sold and people still aren't selling off now, knowing that Tesla have exited the market, it tells me that the market maybe, done, like the most of the pain might be done. But yeah, it's unknown, but I don't think it's a bad time to buy it. If you were buying Ethereum and you look at it and say, I'm going to scale in, like, I have a plan where I said that I would buy. So what was my plan? I would put 10%. I would say, let's say I got 2 million to re-enter the market. I would put 10% in at 1,400. I would put 12% in at, 1,200. I would put 14 or 15% in at 1,000, and I would just keep scaling down and increasing my bag until I hit the bottom, because I would have unlimited money. So then my average gets quite low, and worst case, I get in and then the market just goes the other way. I wouldn't chase it. I would only just get in with a small allocation that I have. I don't care about if I'm not all in crypto, because I see that crypto is like a 10x opportunity over the next 4 or 5 years. I don't need a massive bag to fucking sit there and stress, because I have ridden out multiple bear markets. I've ridden out the 2018 to 2020. I went from 3.5 million in crypto down to about 300K, crushed, just holding shit coins, and then I did buy a lot of Ethereum though at that point. And then I rode it back up to, across 10M now, all up in net worth. So you've got to ride those cycles, you've got to have the brass balls, because they are designed to shake you out. If you sell at a 2x and it goes to 10x, you fucked. And you just will never be able to re-enter. Something like Ethereum or even Bitcoin to a point, but Ethereum, I just see as something that people should hold at least, like, even now, like 5%, 10% of their net worth in, because the upside is tremendous and the downside is, even if it's 90%, the upside's still worth it. I do think the next cycle Ethereum's heading to 9K, even if it's, 2024, 2025. I do think Ethereum's going to 9K, so it'll be what, $1 trillion market cap. I do think that's very, very likely, because Ethereum's reducing supply, so demand's only going to go up, because Ethereum's great because it can capture every narrative. Every time that captures DeFi, captures NFTs, it can be sculpted into the direction of whatever the narrative is current that really needs to fucking, like, people can get behind. Bitcoin is just a store of value. Even if it got sculpted into payments, the payment argument's not that good, because if you pay me in Bitcoin, if I go down and fucking give the chick $10 worth of Bitcoin to buy a coffee, and then she converts it to US dollars, she's not holding the Bitcoin. So she's a seller. So I've given my Bitcoin to someone who's just sold it on exchange. So it's like a net sale, right? So the payments argument for Bitcoin sucks. And the digital store of value is strong because inflation's predictable, it's transparent, it's easy to store. The gold story is tough. I love gold, I love gold and silver. But the story for those is very hard, because if I say, I want to store, I'm a fund and I want to drop like fucking 80 million on gold, put 8% of our $1 billion allocation into gold, I can't really buy physical because I have to store it. I have to store a ton of gold or whatever. I have to store it, I have to transport it, I have to secure it, I have to fucking it's very fucking expensive. Whereas crypto or Bitcoin especially, it's easy. I just buy a ledger, a couple of ledgers, put the money on, where everyone can see where it is. It can't be fucked with, it's just there. So the story of Bitcoin as the pristine piece of collateral, I do think is a strong one. I think that Bitcoin in the long term, people will eventually probably lock it up for loans and things like that. And a lot of the Bitcoin supply will be off the market. So I do think that over the long term, Bitcoin will become very valuable, but that Ethereum is better in most ways. And it's certainly got the more upside because they can sculpt it in fucking any direction, and they've, made it deflationary, or they plan to. Proof of stake, so like, 50-60% of the supply will be locked eventually, and people will get a return on it. So when large funds say, oh, well, we want to invest in Bitcoin, we want to invest in Ethereum, well, Ethereum will generate a yield. So when they tell their customers, Ethereum's clean energy, it generates a yield. We get sell our yield every year, the 5% or whatever it generates, clean energy, easy to fucking store. It captures all these narratives, it's got smart contracts, all this crap. It's an easy sell, right? Because the energy issue is going to become a problem in the future, because even though Bitcoin itself, they're using clean energy, so they say, carbon credits and all that crap, it's still very wasteful. Still a hard sell. You're running a large fund, they'll say that, like their investors or their customers, they don't want to get looked into. They don't want to get fucking like any questions. So it's a bad look, because the activists and that'll be like, oh, so-and-so fund are fucking, backing Bitcoin and it's using so much fucking energy and it's based out of China and all that crap. So Ethereum's an easier sell.
Okay. So blue chip cryptocurrencies, gut feeling, look at the community, and just play smart and play safe
I think
and shoot big.
you have your fucking like blue chips. What I do, I have my Ethereum blue chips, so I'll have like, if I have my crypto, I'll put maybe 50 something percent right now in Ethereum. I have some Bitcoin, which is just if Ethereum fails, it's a small chance, but it's possible. And then I have like probably 10-15% that just runs in absolute shit coins. Shit coins that I have now, I have Lucifer, which I've had since ICO, which was 12 cents. It's about 19 cents now. Polkadot since ICO. I have Glimmer since ICO, Flow, Clover, just some Polkadot stuff. And then I have a lot of fucking cash. So my shit coins are still not absolute shit coins, but if I think the cycle's turning bullish even in the next year or two, I would move 10% of that into completely speculative plays, like plays where maybe 1 or 2 will go 100x and then 8 or 9 of them will go to 0.
Sweet. I think that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Hey, Stephen, great story. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother.
My question is, do you have citizenship in multiple countries?
I have residency. I don't have citizenship yet because for me, applying for citizenship, it's quite difficult because I have quite extensive criminal history and I don't want to bullshit on it because you can get your citizenship, but they can revoke it later, which I've had friends of mine get their citizenship through and only to get it revoked at the worst opportunity time after they've paid and been given a passport, then it gets revoked. So for me, it's not like I don't have citizenship in other countries. I have residencies, but for someone who has a clean record, I would recommend it. I know a few good citizenship programs if you need to know. What's your question about it?
Specifically, like what they look into, like criminal history. If you're in the military, would they also look at like your military records, stuff like that?
They can. It depends on the country. Some of them are a bit more, I would say, they ask a lot more questions, like St. Neves and around there, like the Caribbean. They're quite question intensive compared to somewhere like Vanuatu. I think it's 120K US, and they're definitely ask less questions. And then there's places like Portugal and things like that, which I think are more still ask quite a bit of questions. But every now and then opportunities come up where, like now we're in a recession, so there's food crisis and things like that. They'll be taking a lot more citizenships, right? Like they'll be asking less questions because some of those countries rely on the citizenship program for most of their fucking wage. Vanuatu, I think over half of their income comes from citizenship applications for the whole country. So in times like this, they'd probably a lot more lapse because they need the money. So if you have any murkiness, the best time to apply is when no one's applying, like now, rather than when their country's doing very well. They'll be like, well, we don't fucking need certain people.
Stephen, thank you for sharing your story. Really appreciate that, man.
Right, man.
So in the beginning, you mentioned that, as a man, you have to become, and throughout your story, you talked about all the different risks that you took and how you experienced some setbacks after taking those risks, but bouncing back from that. So my question is, what was the mindset that kind of drove you to take those risks and to take advantage of those opportunities? And then also, what was your mindset recovering from the setbacks and bouncing back?
For me, I sort of took a personal inventory at some point where I just wrote down, I wrote down the truth sort of about myself, where I stood. I remember I spent a lot of time, probably my teenage years onwards, sort of lying to myself, like I used to not really live that much in reality. Like I was playing video games and I used to think I was getting picked on at school. I had a fucking hard time there. But I'd go home and then I'd be like, I'm the man, sort of still, things like that. I just didn't really live in reality. And then after I had the shit bashed out of me, it was like an eye-opening moment, like I'm not the man. These people could have killed me at any time. I couldn't really even defend myself. I'd never been in a fight. And then I sort of took a personal inventory in the hospital there, and that just stuck with me for a long time. And I remember, the weird thing is the Matrix movie, I remember I watched it not long after getting out of hospital. I only seen it for the first time. And the part where the main character's laying down or whatever, and the concept that he could learn things like that. You know, like they could put the headset on him and just be like, you're going to learn Kung Fu, you're going to learn how to do this, you're going to learn this. And then I sort of realized through that, like you can kind of learn anything. You know, it's not really over for a guy unless you stop trying. It's very hard to stop someone who just keeps bulldozing through. You know, like he's just going to keep trying no matter what. But it's still difficult. I know that when you get setbacks, and it's hard, you know, like there's setbacks, they do knock you back, especially if it's about a woman and things like that. But it's hard because a lot of it's mindset, right? Like you've got to master this. If you can't master this, like your own head, you're going to really struggle as a guy, especially a younger guy, because you've got all the testosterone's raging, things like that. It's not hard to get into trouble or have a bad relationship or something that derails you. You know, like I see a lot of guys I've known that have had relationships go badly and, you know, ended up destroyed just from the chick, or they get like fucking depressed or something and it just sticks and rolls through. You know, so I do think that it's definitely hard, but mindset and keeping yourself grounded, you know, with the gym and boxing, being around other guys. I think when men are together, you sort of soak up like energy from other guys and they sort of help build you up and things like that. You just got to find guys that do that, and you got to become a guy like that yourself. You know, like you got to give value and get value back. And yeah, people bring you down when you're around them. Try and spend less time around those people and people that make you feel good when you leave. You know, like some people you're around guys and you leave them and you're like, fuck, I feel like shit. You know, like I feel like I've just been leeched off this whole fucking time. And then others you leave and you're like, I feel great. You know, like I feel like I could fucking do anything. And you got to find more people that charge you up and less people that drain you. Because as a guy, especially, it can weigh you down, right? Like your mind, you know, it can get heavy.
Awesome. That answers my question. Thank you.
Solid.
So my question was more around the gym stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of us go and fuck things up around the gym by diet or other things. What are the best tips you have to like make those gains? Because I mean, I'm hitting the gym 3 times a week, and now it's kind of like, okay, I need to get diet and other things. What are your main recommendations to get all that sorted? I mean,
what are your goals? To get bigger or get leaner? What do you weigh now?
I currently weigh 175 pounds, and so I'm 20% body fat probably. So I need to put on muscle, and I need to take off some of that fat, but it's not a major goal. I don't have to get rid of a lot. And so gains is kind of going to be more helpful too. So it's kind of like
the best results I got is I skip breakfast. I just have coffee for breakfast. I'll still have milk, coffee, milk, no sugar, no bullshit. I have 2 coffees for breakfast. I'll go to the gym. So I usually wake up probably about 8 a.m. I'll have 2 coffees, 8:30. I'll go to the gym probably about 9. So I'm on the gym on just coffee, and I'll train hard. I probably only train for 30 minutes, and then I'll do 20 minutes cardio after. So I do 30 minutes, kind of more of a circuit. I don't bodybuild or any of that. That has never really worked for me. I just do like a circuit. So one day, just do a heavy circuit, kettlebells, fucking, I don't know. It might be like one day I'll be like chest and shoulders. And then the next will be like fucking legs and abs. And then the next day after that, it'll be like back and fucking traps. And then the day after that, it'll be arms, but it'll be a circuit. So I'll train like, you know, curls and then take not really much rest and then do another fucking set of like, you know, hammer curls or something like that. Just change it up. And I try to get like a very intense workout for 30 minutes rather than, because I find that it's very time consuming if you're trying to run a business or something like that. And you think, oh, I'll just train for an hour. Then you spend a lot of time fucking around. And I just try to train hard, and then I'll do cardio after, then I'll stretch. So all up, it runs about an hour. Try and get a good stretch going at least 10 minutes for 10 minutes after I do my cardio. Because I find if I don't stretch, my body just starts to fucking get like real scrunched up. And especially as you get older, and the stretch when you leave the gym and you've stretched, you feel great. Like I never used to stretch in the army. I only used to start stretching when I was about 30, but it fucking feels good when you leave. It's like the endorphins and that are pumped up. And then I'll leave the gym. Then I'll usually have lunch. So it's been about 4 hours since I woke up, and I'll have lunch probably about, I don't know, 500-600 calories, mostly protein. And then dinner, I'll probably have dinner at about, 5 or 6. And then I have quite a big dinner, maybe 1,000 or 1,500 calories. And then I'll have protein before I go to bed, and that's it. So I probably only I wouldn't eat more than 2,000 calories a day. And I train an hour a day. I don't think that, for me, I just don't need these fucking like ginormous amounts of calories. And because I used to be a fat dude, if I start eating even 3,000 calories a day or something, my stomach and that just starts to blow out. And I notice it because I've got a lot of my clothes are tailored. So if I put on a fucking like pair of pants, I just notice that it's getting tight. I think if you've been like had a gut and things like that before, it's easier to gain fat for the rest of your life. You've got to be a bit more cautious. And everyone has different, like a body shape that's different, you know, like some guys are just Chad fucking figures. They're just genetic freaks, you know, like you go to the gym and they say, oh, I do this, I do that. But if you do that, you wouldn't get anywhere near the same results. I think genetics play a massive part, and you've got to figure out what works for you. And some people, as much as it's demotivating, some people just don't have it in them to be like fucking enormous. So they can just be the best for what they have. And that I think damages people, because people say, oh, well, he's doing this and he's getting such massive results, you know, like I have to fucking, I should be getting those results, but genetics is just completely different. You know, you can have the same test levels as someone else, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be the same. Some guys, I've seen guys where they do fucking just push-ups and sit-ups and they're huge in jail. And then other guys that do fucking heaps of things and they eat a loaf of like a bit of bread and they get fat. You know, it's just the genetics are completely different for two different types of people. So you can only do what's best for you. And I think, yeah, circuit's a great start, and yeah, keep eating. And I think that the average guy only needs to eat like twice a day. For me, it's just, if I eat too much, I'm always fucking digesting. So I'm trying to work and I get a bit of brain fog when I'm trying to work, and I'll be doing a trade or something like that. And I'll be like, oh, I just don't feel that good because I've eaten too many times during the day. So that snack during the day and eat small meals, and that doesn't work for me. What works for me is just like 2 meals a day. Keep the carbs under like 100 grams, no more than that. And yeah, coffee during the day, I'll drink probably 4 coffees a day for me. And that's just what works for me. I don't always want to be digesting food because I just feel like shit. It's hard to be motivated. And then the insulin's always fucking spiking and things like that. I like to just try and keep it as low as possible. Then it spikes, yeah, but that's always going to happen, rather than have it like always fucking up. And I try to keep the sugars really low, but I still fucking like, I'll have days probably 2 or 3 times a week where I'll eat like a dessert or something. I don't torture myself. You know, some guys, it's very hard to stick to if you're insanely fucking like, oh, I can't even have a protein bar or something. You know, some guys are extreme. And I think that as long as you look better than 90 or 95% of people, the work that it takes to get to that 99% is not really worth it for me. Because the work to become like from, you know, a good figure to a complete bodybuilder is like, maybe it's 10 times as much work. And to a girl or someone, it's not really, it's a little bit better. You know? So I don't think that hits a risk, like the reward is not really worth the outlay for me at that point. It's like a guy who's already can play basketball, but then he says, oh, I want to try and play like a pro. That's going to take a shitload of time. And I just don't get paid in the gym. So I could just never do that. I think just hitting what works for you, and it's good for your mind too, because, you know, it's nice to feel like you've accomplished something rather than think, oh, I have to, you know, be ripped, fucking Chad, all this shit. Because for some people, that's just not going to happen.
Awesome. Much appreciated, sir.
Thank you for sharing everything so far, man.
Nice guitar.
Oh, thanks, man. So right now I'm in the process of re-entering more of the blockchain and crypto sphere. I'm straddling getting into Solidity development, but then I also want to double team it with investment. I'm definitely a little rusty on my development skills, but I'm diving deep into it over the next few months while I'm doing my other work. I just wanted to see, you know, what you thought, or if you know developers in the Solidity sphere, and if you're very well connected with that, and because mostly why I'm bullish on the Solidity is just because it's such a great ecosystem, and also why I'm bullish on Ether. There's definitely so much that can be built on top of it, and so much that gets funneled through it. And then the second part of my question is, are you bullish on like, because I originally like the white paper on Monero, but it is like seen as more of the pirate coin, and I wanted to also see if you had any experience with Monero and any future that you see with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll start with Solidity. I'm definitely not a dev myself. I don't know a ton of devs. I know some, and I definitely know that it's a industry that I think that you're making the right decision to look into. I think Solidity itself is great. And I think that as Ethereum grows, that use of the language and the utility will go up as well. I think that Ethereum is still at the Windows fucking 3.1 stage of Microsoft, I believe. I might end up being wrong, but I do think that even if someone takes over from Ethereum, that they may well use that language or it'll be something similar, or it'll still have a place in the future. So I think that it would only be absorbed at this point. I don't think that it would be destroyed. And I think that for me, I don't really have contact with devs, but I can definitely have a look and put a message out. I think for you, it would be great to get involved in the communities for Ethereum, for other cryptos as well. Just as you're studying fucking development and programming, all that sort of stuff as well. I think that the best thing that someone can do in that position is just get in the communities of crypto projects that are starting out and eventually just offer to help. Might only be able to offer to help in very small ways or something like that, but eventually you're going to offer to help in a project, and you're going to learn along the way. And that's how a lot of guys get their start, because the project that they offer themselves into, you get to meet other developers, and they might only be other very lower level developers or something, but eventually something sticks and something gets good traction. And then they go, oh, well, I know this guy that's he's been very loyal, he's done a lot of work, and then it can grow into something bigger. And for the Monero, I love Monero. I've experience with Monero with what I do, obviously, but I love Monero itself, but I don't know how it goes in the future, because I sort of think that if it can't, chain analysis or whatever doesn't work on it, if they can't figure it out, and they did arrest Richard in South Africa, what was that, 6 months ago or something? They brought him in for about 4 weeks and then let him go. So I would be how that happens, I'd be a little bit skeptical on Monero, but I'd also be that I think that if they don't chain analysis, they can't figure it out. If they can't figure out how the wallets, work and link it all together or whatever, I would think that it would just get taken off exchanges eventually. And there'll still be a market for it on the web, dark web, whatever. There'll still be a market for it, but I don't know how that works with its price, because funds and things like that would never be able to invest in it. It's just too murky, right? And then for the use case to be broken, like privacy, that's pretty much what the whole coin's about. So for large funds and that to be like, we're going to adopt Monero and invest and put investors, that would never be able to happen. So I think Monero, the technology is amazing. I think that it's if I had my way, I think that it would be bigger than Bitcoin. I think Monero is like the last true privacy coin. I believe that, but whether chain analysis or something, or they can already have it figured out, is one thing. But I do think, I love Monero, so I'll always have a soft spot for it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Right now I'm in the, at least there's a few developers, and one main one in particular that's kind of taking me under his wing and doing my own independent studies. That seems like having pretty good in on that.
And get visible. Mm-hmm. You need to get I don't know what you do now, but get as visible as possible. You need to get on fucking Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And you just need to get you see projects and just give your take on them. You can get on YouTube and give your opinion. You don't need to give an opinion at a fucking scholar level, but just give your opinion at the level that you know. And over time you'll build up, and eventually over time communities will be like, yeah, this guy looked into our project, he gave it a good fucking that you can attract people from the community to you, and then opportunities come. Without visibility and attention, even as a programmer, your opportunities are a lot less, especially for a guy starting out. It's not just programming. I think in general, guys starting out in anything, they need to be very visible. If people don't know you, people even, especially fucking devs and things like that, because there's a lot of devs that just want to stay private. And I understand that in crypto, but if you want to be a dev that shows your face, it gives you a bit of an edge, I think, because obviously they just need to stay private for some things, because you could be kidnapped. All sorts of shit can happen if you control keys with a lot of money and things like that. You willing to show your face and things like that, it gives you just a little bit more of an edge.
Okay, cool. I think there was, let me see here. Do you think just on the investment front, this is where the last part of my question, I just want to keep or stack in my cash ready to invest into different things. Do you see just continuing to do dollar cost averaging, researching the projects, and as long as I'm ready for probably 2023, 2024 bull run, that this one's going to be, that at least that sets people up for good footing if they just start stacking it now, getting their blue chips together, getting their Ethereum, and getting ready. But
I think that it doesn't hurt. Let's say your income's $2K a month. Let's just say you're making $2,000 a month. if you were to say every month I'm putting like fucking, 10% or 20% of my income in that I have whatever I have left. So let's say my income's fucking 4K a month and then I'm spending 2 or something. So I have let's say 2 left. And I put 10, 20% of my leftover money into the market. And I'm not just putting it in like really crazy speculative plays. I'm trying to allocate it, predominantly to Bitcoin and Ethereum, maybe even some Monero. And then I put a very smaller percentage in like riskier plays that have more upside but more risk. And then I think that, yeah, it's just because sometimes you can't make it in one cycle, right? Like I realized that when I started, like I never had a lot of money either. So when I said that it took me 2 cycles to make it, because I made it one cycle, I made good money, but I lost a lot of it in the bear market. Like my money went down, but then I kept DCAing in the bear market too. So when the next run come, I was well positioned. Sometimes it just does take 2 cycles. Not everyone has hundreds of thousands to put in the market to make it in one cycle. Sometimes they have to make it in 2, sometimes they have to make it in 3. It's just everyone's got a different fucking path. And as long as you're continuing to add, your Ethereum, whatever number keeps going up, or your Bitcoin, whatever, you're in a great position. And I don't recommend being all in crypto. I don't say like, 100% of your net worth should be in it, unless you're very like fingers on the pulse, you're very committed, or you're very young. So if it does go to shit, you can just start again. Then I do think that you're on the right track, and you've got a good look for development. Like you're obviously into metal. You've got fucking show your face, mate. You've got nothing to hide. It's great.
Yeah, I think I've definitely with some of the other work that I've done, it's gotten me in trouble in the past with working with some communities in chemistry and showing my face, but I think I'm ready to do it on crypto and also with the chemistry. Is there, I guess, ending up last one, is it just be bullish and just be brave with that, with being seen with crypto? Because that's been one thing that I have genuinely been a little nervous about, because people can get kidnapped,
Yeah, I assume you're in the States. I think that, yeah, you're pretty safe. I mean, guys like Richard Hart run around fucking Eastern Europe and they're billionaires. They'd be easy to grab. So I think that you're safe, definitely. But I do think that you have to be reasonable. I would never run around and say how much crypto you have. Like, I have fucking like 1,000 Ethereum or something like that. Or I just come in my back, like fucking my house is unlocked or something like that. I would never dox yourself to that point. But also people aren't going to really go after you unless they have like a purpose. That's part of why it's hard to, like, if you're doing research or like public analysis on a community, it's hard. Like if you fucking go after Hex or something like that and say, the project's trash or whatever, you might get problems, like people are invested in that and their money is invested. So if they feel like, oh, well, you're making my money become less, they can get fucking, threatening. But I would assume the violence is pretty low. The chance of violence is low, unless you're in countries like, where the violence is high, like South America or places like that. I would never come on if I was in like fucking Brazil or Argentina or something like that and say, oh, I'm a crypto whale, because you might get fucked up, But where you are, I think, and as a dev, I do think that, yeah, I'd be attending meetups. I'd be attending meetups in your community. I'd be attending like fucking, I don't know if they have like an ADA group or something like that. Locally, there's a lot of fucking like ADA clubs or Hex clubs, things like that. I'm getting involved in as much as you can, increasing your visibility, trying to provide value where you can, providing value for no money initially for quite a long time. And then eventually like give, and then your opportunity to take comes. And it's all been a fair value exchange, and they'll build you up over time as long as you provide value. And I do think that, yeah, there's definitely potential there. And it's a good avenue to go down, because next bull market, you could be very well positioned in a community where the token's very successful.
My question's 2 parts. So the first part is, are there any like good crypto websites that explain the basics of what like mining is and how it moves? Just because with crypto blowing up, there's a lot of like BS language, and for the most part, what I hear is just people like say, put all your money into this, but I don't really know the fundamentals behind it. So that's my first part of the question.
Yeah, well, I would just use CoinMarketCap and see the projects and then investigate them from there. So you see like how I sort of started when I started. I think CoinMarketCap was very small. You would just look at the projects that got the tractions, the top 20 and 50, and research there, and then look at their little competitors that are much smaller. So maybe like you look at Chainlink, and then you look at Near or something like that, that's a little bit similar, but smaller market cap, because usually they're just a higher beta version. So if Chainlink finds a lot of success, well, then the smaller program or the smaller coins that are very similar to Chainlink can have more success, because people speculate that, well, if Chainlink's worth 10 billion and this shitcoin's worth 10 million, maybe 100 million is a fair valuation. So it's a higher beta version, right? It's like gold. Like if gold goes through the roof, silver usually outperforms it because it's higher beta, it's a smaller market cap. And people speculate that it's got more opportunity. So I would research what projects have found success and then find competitors, and then start to think in your mind, like how has this project been so successful? Why, like Chainlink, why is Chainlink, got to a $10 billion valuation? Why has it got a cult following? Why has it got fucking all these things? And then start to think, well, what project could be similar? Are there any devs or fucking project leaders like Richard Hart or something coming up where people are going to really get behind and things like that? Because Hex itself used to be, I remember Hex was like 100% or something or more. When it first launched, it fucking crashed like 50%. It's a disaster. But then it became a massive success because people make projects successful, like the person behind it. Because crypto, it's a lot of speculation. A lot of these things don't really have a lot of use cases, outside of like Ethereum or Bitcoin or things like that. It's just what people can perceive the value to be. And it's tech is very hard to value. That's why cryptocurrency projects are so much upside, because it's very hard to value such an emerging technology. If the people could value it fairly, there wouldn't be like Moon fucking 100x projects. It's the speculation that makes it. So you have to think very outside the box. That's why it's very difficult to value. But project leaders, narratives, and fucking the community, like, is the community really behind? Do they love the project? Do they love the guy who runs it? Like, they love fucking Sergey behind Chainlink. People fucking love him. He's well known. And Richard Hart, I would say he's another guy that's well known. People love him. Obviously, they love Vitalik. But these are people that they're all completely different, but they're leaders. Like, they're well known. The people that invested in Hex didn't invest in Hex and say, oh, I'm going to fucking sell after it goes to 2x. There were people that even early on, I've followed Richard Hart for a long time and followed Hex when it first launched. I thought that it was going to be a disaster, and it ended up being a big success. But Richard, he's a very intelligent guy. And the people that invested, they didn't invest to make it 2 or 3x. They believed in the project long term. They believe in the person who's selling the story. They believed the narrative the whole way through. So it wasn't just a bunch of guys that wanted to make a quick buck. It was guys that thought, well, I'm not going to buy and I'm never going to sell. So then the project become really successful.
Okay. And then my second part of my question is, what's like the versatility and like potential capability for behind crypto? What sets it apart from like traditional assets?
Well, sets it out for traditional assets that's, I would say, very hard to value because it's an emerging tech. So people look at Ethereum and it's very hard to say what it's really worth. Like, it could be 100 billion, it could be multiple trillions, but that's where the gains are made. Like if I sat there and said, oh, well, it can only ever be like PayPal, it would be capped. You know what I mean? But as the people's minds wander and they say, oh, well, it could replace PayPal, it could replace this, it must be capturing all this value. So it must be worth all of what these companies are worth. So it might be worth many trillions. It's greatness is that it's difficult to value. Same as Tesla. Tesla's value is that it's constantly got a new narrative coming. They're selling cars, they're selling fucking like trucks, and then they're going to be selling, like, people think, oh, if I buy Tesla, they're going to be the massive AI company in the future. They're going to unlock all this value. So it's constantly capturing a new narrative that makes it impossible to really value. But people just think that it's higher. So it's that sort of, a lot of it is gut instinct too, but it's just seeing competitors and what they're valued at. Like people say, oh, Bitcoin, it's got to be worth this much because Visa, MasterCard, and fucking Amex and all that are worth this much, and Bitcoin's payments and it's superior and it can, replace these banks. So it's capturing all this value all of a sudden. So it's, to me, that's part of the valuing process. What is a competitor worth? What is the technology worth? If Ethereum captures all like the settlement layers for fucking like, if it can be smart contracts for real estate, insurance, fucking everything, that it's people's minds start to wander, and that's how the valuations get so crazy. Like if people could value it and think like, oh, you know, like a lot of that stuff just is never going to happen. You know, it's very unlikely to happen. Well, the values would be capped to a very low point. It wouldn't be an exciting market. It would be boring. See, the .com was beautiful, the .com boom, because people saw the internet companies and thought, fuck, we know this is enormous, but how do we value this? So a lot of the companies which were just toilet paper companies going like 1,000x or 10,000x or massive success, and then crashed, but had massive success. And then only a few made it out and were enormous, you know, like Amazon, and I think MicroStrategy survived and a couple of others. But yeah, it's a difficult tech to value, but I do think that's why it's so susceptible to these boom busts, and it'll have utilities that people haven't even figured out yet. You know, like the internet companies in the late 90s, people never knew what they would be. They just knew that it was going to be big. And a couple emerged from the ashes and many got fucked and went to zero. And I think that's what will happen with crypto. But I do think that that's still many cycles away. I think that people say, oh, the .com bust for crypto is now. I don't think so. I think that crypto will go to a high that people will be stunned and then it'll collapse. But I do think crypto is going to an extreme high and then it'll collapse. And then at the run, like even the 4-year cycle will be a bear cycle. That's what eventually will happen to crypto. It'll go like 120K Bitcoin or something, maybe next cycle. And then the cycle will crash. And then the next cycle, it won't break that high again. It'll be like a 8 years fucking essential bear run. It'll be something crazy like that. Because the tech will be discovered where people say like, this is the value on it. So it gets kind of capped, you know. But that's not there yet because Bitcoin's got the spot ETF that hasn't launched. It's got like it hasn't got a physical ETF yet. So that's the last real, to me, that's somewhat the last narrative standing, is that the physical ETF hasn't launched yet. And when it does launch, that requires a lot of them, like people with 401ks, insurance funds, pension funds, things like that. They can buy crypto in there and store it there. So it essentially locks up a percentage of the supply, because people in their 401ks or whatever, they're not just buying Bitcoin to swing trade it and sell it a week later. They're buying Bitcoin to lock up until they're old men. So once that happens, that's kind of the last narrative standing, because it takes a big chunk of supply off the market. But that eventually these guys who have a shitload of Bitcoin will just sell. Like they've been buying it since it's $10 or something. And when that final narratives come out, they'll be like, these are all the ones that are here for the short term. Like this is all the upside that could happen in the short term. And now we're going to be like fucking eight or 10 years until the tech catches up with the speculation, and the big whales will start selling. And then when the tech catches up with the speculation, that'll be like Amazon, and eventually it'll find its right price. But I do think that we hit like next cycle, maybe 100, 120K crash. And then the next 4-year cycle after that is a bear cycle. So we go to like 40K or something. And then people send them and it'll be crashed. Because the narrative's kind of fucking running out for Bitcoin. Like we've got a ETF, not a futures ETF's already done. They've got the inflation story is still quite strong because people are very aware of inflation now. The ETH2's coming out. You know, that's my take.
Yes, I am 20. I live in Denmark here. So you can probably tell by the potato in mouth accent. Oh no.
No.
Am I too loud?
No, you're good. Let's go.
Okay. Is that a bottle of vodka right there? You were Russian, Stephen, weren't you? Yeah. So I started right now. Okay, I just recently went to the gym over the summer to try and get more comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm a little confused right now in my life. So I want to ask you if you have any advice or direction. Yeah.
What do you want?
I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I'm a little more nervous than I expected here. I just wanted some advice for a good gym routine, let's say.
A good gym routine.
I'm a very lanky guy. I'm very thin, so.
It's a good start. Better place to start skinny than fat, mate. You got a good base because you can fucking put weight on. It's easy to put weight on than it is to lose fat and put weight on. That's the hardest part. You're in a good spot. I would say a routine is just to eat more, mate. What are you like a fucking ectomorph? You're a hard gainer?
Like said, my metabolism was normal, but it doesn't necessarily feel that way when I eat a lot. I eat eggs. I eat all the high protein, high T foods.
Yeah, but you probably don't eat enough, right? Like you eat probably a lot of protein, but you don't eat enough food.
Yeah.
If I was you, what weight are you? I would assume maybe like 70 kilos, 75 kilos, something.
Yeah, even lower actually. I think quite a bit lower. Maybe.
Yeah, it's a good start, mate. I would be looking to get 2,500 calories in a day if I were you, and I would be looking at not being short of carbs, because if you're a hard gainer, carbs aren't going to really hurt you. And I would be lifting heavy. Probably I wouldn't be going every day, especially as an ecto. I'd be going 3 or 4 days a week, and I would be doing cardio as well. And I would just, for you, I think that you would start at the gym, lift weights, and start at a time where it's not too busy, so that you don't get in your own head and think, oh, I don't want to train because too many people are. So train on your own like that, train for 4 or 5 months. And then I would be looking to join like some sort of boxing gym and get around a lot of men. And then really start, over time. It's not something that you just do on or off, because it would be too hard to stick to. But I would start at a gym, I would be training, and then I would look to a boxing gym. And then you'll change your life.
Yeah. To really learn how to take a punch, right? You said
it's not that. It's be around guys. You don't know what your body can do yet.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Hey mate.
How you doing? How do you protect yourself against being derailed by women? Like for me, I don't have any experience with women, so I've got a pretty clear path of what I want to do. I've got a few internships with electrical engineering companies, getting through my electrical engineering degree. And my main worry is, since I don't have any experience with women, I really don't want to be derailed due to my lack of experience.
I think that someone like you, like obviously very intelligent, it's very hard. You've got to be careful not to become too logical. For me, I think someone like you can become a hyper logical person where you overthink things, and you can almost become like a prison in your own logic, like your own sort of thoughts, like over analyzing things and things like that. And some things just your logic will fail with, and women is one of them. Like to think like that you're going to be able to understand women. You can understand character traits and things that they do, but how could you ever understand a girl, like to be a girl that likes to get her hip, or likes to get choked, likes to get slapped, or fucking like degraded during sex, something like that? How could you ever be like, well, I'm just going to be able to predict someone like that? You couldn't. But to be able to predict women as a man, I think that you can pick out traits and things like prepare yourself and protect yourself and things like that, but you can never be like, I'll just have them figured out, because each one's different. Some are more predatory than others. I don't think that they all are predatory. Some are, for sure. And that it's just going to take you experience to figure it out. You're obviously a very logical, intelligent guy. And that's a good thing for business and things like that. But it can become hard because it becomes very predictable. Like you're dealing with a person that's hyperlogical. For women, it can become very predictable, very fucking like, if you get frustrated because they're not dealing from a place of logic, they're dealing from a place of emotion. So it becomes like there's a gap, and it can become for them not really that fun, because a guy that's extremely logical, while he might be very reliable and he's always like he can motivate her and do things like that, she's going to want that fun, and the one that's spiking her emotions, and the logical guy's not going to do that. She's going to either fuck with you to get the spike, or she's going to get it from somewhere else. So the hardest part to be a logical guy, I would say, is to still be extremely logical, but take yourself out of that logic part and still do something that's a little bit fun, or like a little bit crazy. Like you got to have the logic, which is great for business, but then you've still got to be able to fucking like get down on their level and interact with them on that not like super logical place. Otherwise, it just will never really work, and you will end up having a bad experience, because you'll sit there and think like you take something really serious when they're not serious people. Like it's not like dealing with a man. Deal with a man, they're very logical. You can be straightforward, and you understand what their motives are and things like that. But women, sometimes they don't even know what they want. So when you're hitting them from a place of logic and, you know, got a high intelligence, things like that, you can get very frustrated.
Thank you. Yeah. The main issue I have right now is a lot of times in like social situations, I've gotten a lot better, but I'm just way too serious, way too much of the time. Like if it's a light social situation, I'll be just way too serious and got to try to loosen up, I guess.
I understand. It's not a bad spot to start at. It's a better spot to start at than someone that's crazy emotional and they don't have anything under control and they're doing a lot of dumb shit. But then the same can become like another thing where you sort of end up like a bit like the Terminator, and women don't really like that. I've been like that. I've had periods like that before too, like especially after fucking like a bad breakup. You have like a period where you're sort of like, oh, well, I'll be a bit more, put my walls up or something like that. And that's the hardest thing I think for a guy is to be able to do both. Like you around women and you can still be a bit like very fun. And that means sometimes like being funny and more light. You don't have to be like fucking that you're going to, you know, smash everyone in the room. It's just, you got to be able to get down on their level a bit, sort of like children almost. Can't be like the Terminator around a 5-year-old, you know, because they're trying to get you down on their level. You have to get to their level to a point. Otherwise they'll be like, this guy he's no fun. Like he's too serious. So, and but you still keep that logical part of you because it's the part that will save you from bad situation. So it's like a balancing act, right? You want to be, still fun, but keep that like fucking, it's the fun and all that stuff is somewhat of a front, but you're in the moment, but you've still got the back part of your brain or whatever that's still like assessing, you know, is this, you know, beneficial for me? So you don't get like pussy blinded, you know, where guys are just like, the logic just goes out the window and they're doing crazy things because they've got a chick that they have to impress or something like that. So as much as it probably seems like now that, you know, it's quite isolating, and I think that it is for someone who's very hyperlogical or something like that, I do think that it can become quite isolating for people. So you have to find that balance, because too, it can isolate you from other men because you sort of, I've seen guys where they're very intelligent and it almost becomes like a prison. Like they're around people less and less because they start to think like, you know, am I in a bad spot, or this could happen, or like this guy might, you know, exploit me too, or something could happen. And guys start to think like, oh, there's no upside in doing this thing, you know, like you start to get too in your own head, and then it's extremely hard to get out, and it almost becomes like a prison, and you can get isolated there, and it can become a very lonely place. It's a hard thing to break out of, because you only reinforce your beliefs too, because you're very logical, you start to see things and then they happen, you know, like what you see, you get more of, you know.
Stephen, great presentation, man.
Thanks, brother.
The way you're talking about crypto reminds me of like Miguel.
Yeah.
Like
I haven't seen him.
You haven't met him?
Nah.
Oh, he's like, that guy is passionate as fuck about crypto. He's actually the guy that got me. Yeah. He does a course with Charlie from Cultivate Crypto. And he got me into it actually like a year and a half ago. So my question for you is, I think you said you were going to Warsaw soon.
I am.
You are. Funnily enough, I'm interested in going to Poland, like to travel there and see if I want to live there potentially.
Yeah.
So my question is, as a crypto investor and someone that has a lot of money in crypto, how do you deal with traveling around the world? Like with all that money?
For me, I have a considerable, like I have quite a few friends. I would never go somewhere where I don't know other men. Like I would never just go somewhere like fucking on a whim to, you know, Bulgaria or something if I didn't know people in the city that I was going to get to. And I do have a pretty good understanding of crime and violence. So I would never go to like, you know, South America on my own or something like that. And I do. I was in Mexico, you know, a couple of months ago, but I have friends there. And I do understand personal security and things like that quite to a high level. If I was in Warsaw, I wouldn't get private security, but if I had to move to Mexico or something like that, I would get my own security. It's a great thing that you've covered. You've obviously got the awareness that things can go wrong, and that's a good thing. But Warsaw itself, I've never been, so I can't say that I'm an expert, but I have friends there right now, and they do say that it's still, I would say it's safer than London where I am now. Walking around London, I think that to me, it's not organized crime that I worry about. It's more like, you know, that unorganized, opportunistic, small crime where the person gets really hurt, you know, like not the organized crime where they come and fucking put a gun to you and say, oh, we want all your crypto. It's more likely you walk down the street and someone fucking wants your watch or something and they just stab you in the back and take it. You know, instead of being like, give me your shit, they just hurt you, you know, and fuck your whole life up for something silly. You know, it's that unorganized crime that I'm more worried about. I don't worry about mass organized crime because I don't know, it is usually from organized crime people that I've dealt with, they approach you and say, you know, we want this, or we're just going to get you, or hurt you or something. You know, it's an unorganized crime where they're just like, hurt you. So I don't worry about it too much in Warsaw. I think that it is more like that. Yeah, if there is crime, it's more organized crime than small shit.
Sure, that makes sense. And I was listening to the conversation that you had with I think it was Ether, the guy,
Yep.
the developer. I'm also a developer trying to get into Web3.
Brilliant.
And right now I'm doing a Solidity bootcamp. And something that I've noticed about developers that are trying to get into Web3 or already are in there is that like they try and fix problems that don't exist.
Yeah.
Like they try to like, make solutions to things that like no one gives a fuck about.
Yeah.
And like, so my question to you is, what are some issues in Web3, in DeFi, NFTs, anything that like you would love to see solved? And that's something that I could potentially work on as a project to get into Web3.
I like the concept, for me personally, I like the concept of like VR. I think the things in the virtual reality are very interesting to me because I see Meta, which is Facebook, they just rebranded to Meta, but I also see that as Meta progresses virtual reality over the next few years, especially, that there'll be a lot of like shit coins that'll be able to capture that press and that narrative, because as Meta's in the headlines, they'll be able to be like, oh, we're doing something similar, and they'll be able to sort of milk that value into what they're doing. You know, that speculation will be like, oh, well, if Meta's worth fucking, you know, 500 billion or something like that, you know, this fucking company must be worth, you know, 1 billion, even though they're doing nothing. So I think that there'll be opportunities in that to ride on the back of a giant, you know, like you're virtual reality concepts, like I think interesting virtual reality studying, virtual reality fucking like appointments that can be done. You don't have to go there physically face to face. That can be done like fucking through the like fucking glasses, shit like that. Find that stuff interesting. I find like even a virtual reality OnlyFans, things like that, quite interesting. I find like, you know, virtual reality concerts, things like that are interesting. I think there's virtual reality will be an industry that'll get a lot of speculation. So it'll be another one that's hard to value. So there will be a lot of opportunities there. And it's sort of like, it'll become something that people might not be already ready for, and then it'll suddenly be here. So it's an area where you might be able to carve out a little bit of a niche instead of an area where people are already fighting and trying to get known in. That's because it's been there a long time. I think, yeah, VR, I do think that in the next few years, it'll become a massive thing. And I do think that it's going to become like a bit of a gold race. And the person who could get there slightly ahead of the others and build a small niche, even if it's not wildly successful, could find quite a lot of success financially.
Nice one. So metaverse, VR, that's where you see the most potential. Right?
Yeah, I do see it as a lot of potential, because also I see potential that Meta's doing a lot in it now, but also that there aren't a lot of people. There are still people trying to do things and things like that, but not to a massive degree, not to a degree that it will arrive at, you know, where it's a massive industry and there's going to be a lot of people fucking like speculating in that industry. That's going to be, because it'll be able to capture a lot of value. It'd be another one that's hard to price, because people will say, oh, it could steal this, it could do this, it could take all this. But so again, it's difficult to price. So that's where the mania comes in, you know, it's like it comes a gold rush.
Right. What about DeFi? Like, where do you see that? Like, obviously it's growing exponentially, but like, where do you see that? Like in the near future?
I think DeFi is big. I think it's already had a pretty massive boom though. And I do think that it's somewhat bust in a point because there's been a lot of bad news around it. Like, you know, Luna, I wouldn't call it DeFi, but it still did a lot of damage to it's good that the protocols, a lot of them, the good ones held up, but some of them fucked up, you know, like the protocol failed, or like Anchor and other ones like that have been a bit of a disaster in the end. And then Luna's fucked up and things like that. But they're more centralized platforms. I think others held up quite well. But yeah, I think that the DeFi one, I do think that they'll have another cycle, but I think the cycle, the next one, could very well be towards the end quite more focused on VR. and NFTs where they'll fit into VR. I think virtual goods will be another massive one because they can create value from nothing. Like Louis Vuitton or something, you can be in the metaverse in VR and they'll say, you need to buy fucking like Louis Vuitton sunglasses for your avatar or something like that. So they can make money from nothing. So that I think that virtual goods will become a massive thing because again, they don't even have to build the glasses then. They can just sell them in the metaverse, like a character or a collectible item or something like that. So I think that those sort of things have a lot of like opportunity for growth. And that those big brands will move in and give it a lot of light later on. NFTs, I think, have their purpose too, but I think that the next cycle will be something different. I think that it'll be VR at the very end of the cycle, like it'll be a VR sort of theme, and that NFTs will have a place in that thing. But the brands behind the NFTs will be more credible than just small artists or artists that caught the narrative. I think they'll be bigger companies making that collectibles and things like that, like collectible Rolexes or something, but they'll be limited to X amount. And if your character wants one, like in VR, you have to buy one, and it creates like a secondary market because people say, oh, there's not enough watches, things like that. It's like a natural progression for them because they can make the money from nothing. They don't need to even create the item. I think that's where a lot of things are going. I think even like watches and that, I'm very bullish watches and jewelry and things like that for the next probably 4 or 5 years because people like to flex online. They can't sell. You know, if you sell your Rolex, it gets a bit embarrassing. You know, people they don't want the social pressure. They have to keep up. But I do think all that stuff goes into the metaverse in the next, 5, 6 years from now, that Rolexes and all that crap in physical will have a lot less demand. But in that time, I think they can do quite well. But after we go VR, like VR takes off, I think physical items, like they'll be less in demand.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I can definitely envision like NFTs being embedded into the metaverse, like you were saying just there with virtual goods. All right. So my last question is: you mentioned Hex earlier. What's your view on Hex, Richard Hart, and Paul Shane?
I think that Richard Hart's great. He's very intelligent. He's fucking a great figure. He's hyper intelligent. I don't think anyone in the space can beat him in a debate. I don't think that it's even close. I think his knowledge of game theory and people is exceptional. He knows what people buy. He knows what people do. He has a great understanding of like the human psychology behind investing. So I do think that there is a path where he can create like Pulse and PulseX. I invested in PulseX at the ICO. I do think that there is a path where he can turn them both still profitable. I don't think that they'll do like Hex. I don't think that they'll have like 1,000X or anything like that because they're launching at a much higher valuation, right? But I do think that he would have quite a few tricks up his sleeve and that he is very interested in keeping the price up. And also his ego is quite big. So I would say that he doesn't really want to fail. Like he doesn't really want to lose. But I do think that even PulseX, which I've invested about 80,000 in, I do think that it might launch with too high of a valuation if he doesn't time the market right, and it might drop. But I do think that there are routes where he can make the project successful. But I don't see like, even Pulse going like 1,000X or 100X or something like that. But I do see it probably being successful because he has a track record of success now. It's very hard to stop that. But I do see each time he does like another project, it dilutes the last project. So if he releases Pulse, it dilutes Hex, and then it releases PulseX, it dilutes each one because his backers only have so much money, right? So if all his followers have $1 billion that they're going to put in projects and then he releases 3, well, it can only really be sprinkled between all the projects. Instead of just having one power project, it becomes diluted where they have to feed 3 and the gains will peter off over time, I believe. But I am I wouldn't say follower of Richard Hart. I have watched some of his stuff and things like that. I don't agree with everything that he does, but he does know how to get a lot of attention. He's very intelligent. He's a great debater. He's built a great project, and I respect him for that.
Yeah, man, I can agree more. Thanks for answering my questions, by the way.
You're right, mate. Good to meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well. Do you have any knowledge or any advice about possibly starting up a small business, or do you have any knowledge of businesses that have like a low startup cost or that can generate passive income?
I have somewhat of a knowledge. Depends what industry, what's your knowledge in? Like what what are you looking at? What do you have any sort of specialty? Do you have something that not many people have? Do you know certain things? Because I try and think of if you've got any sort of moat around you that can give you an advantage over other businesses. See, a lot of businesses that are easy to start up, you have no advantage. Like people say, oh, I'll get into drop shipping or something like that. And while they can make money, if you're in a job where anyone, even in a fucking third world country, can just say, oh, well, I'm just going to do that. Well, you have absolutely no edge because they're happy to work for very low money. So I'd like to hear what you can do that you have some edge in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the reason I'm asking this is because my long-term goal actually isn't in business or anything. I'm planning to go into entertainment. I'm a screenwriter, so I specialize in writing. So that's kind of a lofty goal. That's what I've been told, but I still plan to try to achieve it. So in the short term, I'm kind of trying to focus on short-term money, I suppose, while I finish up my scripts, which I've been working on every day and stuff. So those are, I mean, that's really what I went to college for that. I just graduated. So I am basically just trying to make short-term money.
Yeah. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. Have you ever thought about approaching them online, guys that already have a following? So this is what I would do if I were you. And just off the top of my head, business. I would approach guys that already have a following. So they already have an audience. They're already on YouTube. And I would say, look, mate, you're a copywriter or a writer. So you know what you're doing. And I would say, look, I'd like to write a book on you, tell your story. And you've got a large audience. So you can provide value in that. Say, oh, I'm not going to charge you anything or write a book, whatever. But by providing value there and saying, make an agreement, say, if I do this, will you promote me to, start my own business in that field? And you can then garner attention for that because they'll give you respect that you've done that work for them and use their audience to a point to become sort of more on your audience too. And then you can build a following for when you eventually go into your sort of screenwriting stuff. Because a screenwriter with no following, it's a lot harder to sell. But if you can build a following and build money doing that over time, you will have more success.